Imagine a car so aerodynamic that it could slice through air better than vehicles designed 90 years later. Imagine engineers achieving a drag coefficient of 0.24 in an era when computers didn't exist and wind tunnels were barely understood. Now imagine that car and the brilliant minds behind it being erased from history while someone else took the credit. This isn't science fiction. This is the untold story of how a Czech genius may have unknowingly designed one of the world's most iconic cars, only to watch history hand the glory to someone else. What if I told you the Volkswagen Beetle, that beloved symbol of German engineering excellence, might actually be built on ideas stolen from a forgotten Czech innovator? What if the real father of the people's car wasn't Ferdinand Porsche, but a man named Hans Ledwinka, working quietly in the mountains of Central Europe? This is the story of brilliance buried by war, innovation crushed by politics, and an entire nation's automotive legacy nearly lost to time. Turn the clock back to the twilight of the 19th century. The lands of Bohemia and Moravia, tucked within the sprawling Austro-Hungarian Empire, were known for beer, glass, and ornate architecture. But in dimly lit workshops scattered across these regions, something revolutionary was taking shape. Horse carriage repair shops were transforming. Railway factories were experimenting. The internal combustion engine had arrived, and Czech hands were among the first to master it. In 1897, a company called Nesselsdorfer Wagenbaufabrikgesellschaft, mercifully shortened to NW, unveiled something extraordinary. The President, the very first gasoline-powered automobile of the entire Austro-Hungarian Empire. While primitive by today's standards, the President was a marvel of forward-thinking design. It featured a two-cylinder four-stroke engine based on Benz's pioneering work, a differential for improved cornering stability, and remarkably, a front bumper, a safety feature virtually non-existent on cars of that era. Meanwhile, in Mlada Boleslav, two bicycle mechanics named Václav Loren and Václav Klement were charting their own course. Starting with bicycles, then motorcycles, they formally began automobile production by 1905. Their philosophy was simple but powerful: build cars that actually work. Reliability and practicality became their calling cards, laying the foundation for what would eventually become Škoda. As the 20th century unfolded, the Czech automotive landscape flourished. Praga emerged with Italian engineering influences. Jawa transitioned from motorcycles to automobiles. Aero brought aviation thinking to car design. But one company would change everything. A carriage manufacturer in Kopervnis underwent a transformation, adopting a new name that would become legendary: Tatra. The name Tatra wasn't born in a marketing meeting. After a grueling test journey across the rugged Tatra Mountains, the company adopted the name as a declaration of philosophy. A car must conquer the harshest conditions before it deserves to be sold. At the heart of this transformation stood Hans Ledwinka, an engineer who refused to follow convention. To Ledwinka, the automobile wasn't simply a horseless carriage. It was an entirely new mechanical organism that demanded radical rethinking from the ground up. His first breakthrough was the backbone chassis. Instead of heavy ladder frames that dominated the industry, Ledwinka created a load-bearing central spine from which swing axles and independent suspension extended. The result? Cars that were lighter, stronger, and remarkably stable on the rough, unpaved roads that characterized Central Europe. But his second innovation was even bolder: aerodynamics. While competitors built cars with upright grills that attacked the wind like blunt instruments, Ledwinka posed a revolutionary question: why fight the air when you can flow with it? The answer materialized in 1923 with the Tatra T11. Its sloping front end eliminated the traditional vertical radiator grille entirely. To contemporary eyes, it looked strange, even eccentric. But Ledwinka wasn't designing for aesthetics. He was engineering for physics. The 1930s arrived with the Great Depression, and the automobile industry faced an existential reckoning. Cars could no longer be symbols of wealth and status. They had to become essential, affordable tools for everyday life. In 1934, A wave of economical vehicles swept across Czechoslovakia almost simultaneously. Praga introduced the Praga Baby, a small, lightweight car with a modest engine aimed at a struggling middle class. Jawa entered the automobile market with the Jawa 700, leveraging their motorcycle expertise to create something simple, affordable, and easy to maintain. Most significantly, Škoda launched the Škoda Popular, a car that embodied the philosophy of mobility for the masses. Affordable, robustly built, and perfectly suited to Central European roads and conditions, the Popular became one of Škoda's greatest pre-war successes. But Tatra was developing something far more radical, the Tatra V570 concept. This was an attempt to create a truly economical car built on revolutionary engineering principles. The V570 featured a rear-mounted, air-cooled engine, eliminating complex radiators and reducing weight dramatically. Its body was rounded and shaped by aerodynamic principles rather than traditional boxy aesthetics. Though it never reached mass production, the V570 established a technical formula that would soon become hauntingly familiar to the world. By the mid-1930s, Tatra's innovations were attracting attention far beyond Czechoslovakia. Hans Ledwinka maintained a complex professional relationship with Ferdinand Porsche, two engineers of the same generation obsessed with the same challenge, creating a people's car that was affordable, durable, and efficient. Ledwinka openly discussed rear-mounted engines, air cooling, and aerodynamic bodies, elements already clearly present in the Tatra V570. These ideas also caught the attention of Adolf Hitler, who viewed the automobile as a political instrument. Hitler wanted an inexpensive car for Germany, capable of cruising the Autobahn and simple enough for mass production. He once declared Tatra to be the ideal car for our highways. In this context, the Volkswagen project was launched, and as the early Volkswagen Beetle took shape, engineers couldn't help but notice disturbing similarities with Tatra's designs. Rear engine layout, air cooling, streamlined chassis, rounded body. By the late 1930s, Tatra refused to stay silent. The company filed a lawsuit against Volkswagen, alleging patent infringement and design theft. But history had other plans. In 1939, Germany invaded Czechoslovakia. The lawsuit was suspended. Factories fell under German control. Ledwinka, who refused to abandon his homeland, was pushed aside from positions of technical authority. During this turbulent period, Tatra introduced an immortal masterpiece, the Tatra 77, a car that shattered every convention of 1930s automotive design. Its body was sculpted in a teardrop shape with a long, sloping rear and a prominent central stabilizing fin to maintain straight-line stability at high speeds. An air-cooled V8 engine sat at the rear, eliminating radiators and complex cooling systems, making the car lighter and more compact. Most remarkably, its drag coefficient measured approximately 0.24 in wind tunnel testing on scale models. In the context of the 1930s, this was nearly unimaginable. To put this in perspective, this figure rivals modern vehicles like the Tesla Model S. Thanks to extraordinarily low air resistance, the Tatra 77 didn't need massive power to achieve impressive speeds. It glided smoothly and remained remarkably stable. Ironically, this very quality earned it a sinister nickname, the Czech's secret weapon. Many German officers, unfamiliar with the handling characteristics of rear-engine cars, lost control at high speeds on the Autobahn and perished. A car born from science and rational engineering became an unintended symbol of wartime danger. In 1989, the Velvet Revolution swept through Czechoslovakia, ending 4 decades of planned economy and ushering in an entirely new reality. The country peacefully split into the Czech Republic and Slovakia. But for the automotive industry, peace didn't mean ease. When the Iron Curtain fell, Czech factories confronted the free market head-on, a market from which they lagged decades behind. Škoda had nearly become the punchline of Europe. Models like the Škoda 125 looked absurdly out of place amid waves of modern Western design. Outdated engines, rough build quality, safety, and comfort that trailed far behind the curve. The problem wasn't the people or the engineering tradition. It was the system, a system that had strangled innovation for far too long. The Czech government recognized that without a strategic partner, the national automotive industry faced collapse. Between 1990 and 1991, the decision to privatize was made, and the Volkswagen Group became Škoda's strategic investor. This wasn't an acquisition designed to erase a local brand. Volkswagen chose to preserve the Škoda name, maintain the factory in Mladá Boleslav, and most crucially, retain the Czech engineering workforce. Volkswagen's strategy was crystalline. Transform what had been perceived as cheap into genuine value. Don't compete through flashiness. Compete through value per dollar. German technology was integrated into chassis, engines, and production processes, while Czech practicality was preserved in space utilization and operating costs. The true turning point arrived in 1994 with the Škoda Felicia. The Felicia wasn't the finest car in Europe, but it accomplished something more important. It was reliable, livable, and worth every penny. Its boxy shape and straightforward lines made no attempt at fashion. The interior wasn't luxurious, but it was sensibly arranged with excellent visibility and controls that were intuitive and user-friendly. Under the hood sat small displacement gasoline engines with simple construction, durable and maintainable. Many versions benefited from Volkswagen technology and quality standards. The Felicia wasn't powerful or fast, but it started every morning, ran steadily on any road, and rarely caused its owner concern. For the first time in decades, Škoda wasn't purchased because there was no alternative. It was chosen because it was the sensible choice. Entering the 21st century, the Czech automotive industry faced a stark paradox. One brand rising powerfully, one technical icon gradually closing its passenger car chapter. Škoda's transformation after partnering with Volkswagen transcended mere quality improvement. It was a complete redefinition of positioning. From a brand labeled cheap and outdated, Škoda became the rational choice for millions of European families. Production in the early 1990s stood at roughly 172,000 cars annually. Today, that figure exceeds 1 million vehicles yearly, supported by a global network and a comprehensive product lineup. The clearest symbol of this maturity is the Škoda Superb. Its exterior design is understated, with clean, balanced lines carrying the composed demeanor of a European midsize sedan. What truly defines it is rear seat space comparable to luxury sedans, practical interior layout, and pricing that forces buyers to reconsider the concept of prestige. Under the hood, the Superb employs modern gasoline and diesel engines from Volkswagen platforms, paired with smooth transmissions and stable drivetrains. It wasn't created to excite, but to travel long distances comfortably, quietly, and efficiently. The Superb stands as proof of the value-for-money strategy, where engineering serves real needs, not brand ego. Tatra's story followed a different trajectory. After numerous attempts to sustain its passenger car division in the post-Soviet era, Tatra released the Tatra 700, a luxurious V8 sedan carrying the silhouette of the past. But the market had transformed. Only about 70 to 75 units sold over 2 years, marking the end of Tatra's passenger car dream. Today, Tatra no longer competes in the sedan segment. The company focuses entirely on heavy trucks for military, mining, and heavy industry applications, fields that align with its heritage of durable engineering and mechanical philosophy. Tatra didn't disappear. It simply returned to where it's strongest. Looking more broadly, the Czech automotive industry now plays a foundational role in the national economy, accounting for roughly 10% of GDP, more than 1/4 of industrial output, and nearly 1/4 of exports. This isn't the result of luck, but of more than a century of accumulated engineering expertise, even through periods of suppression. The history of Czech automobiles isn't a story of uninterrupted triumph. It's a story of resilience. From carriage workshops in Bohemia to Tatra's inventions that ran decades ahead of their time, through 4 decades constrained by politics, and finally reborn in a market economy. Each era left its mark, and perhaps the greatest legacy of the Czech automotive industry doesn't lie in the number of cars sold, but in a quiet lesson. True engineering may be forgotten, but it never truly disappears. The question that opened this story remains unanswered by history. Was the Volkswagen Beetle truly a pure product of German engineering? Or was it shaped by the pioneering ideas of a Czech genius, then written out of the narrative? The patents were filed. The lawsuits were suspended by invasion. The similarities were undeniable. But the world moved on, and Hans Ledwinka's name faded while Ferdinand Porsche's became legendary. Perhaps that's the real tragedy. Not that ideas were borrowed, but that brilliance was buried. If this story resonated with you, subscribe to the channel, hit like, and share this video with those who love cars not because of the badge, but because of how they were made. In upcoming episodes, we'll continue unrolling old film reels, telling the forgotten stories of automotive history. Leave a comment telling us which country you want to explore next. See you next time.